Hey everybody, Billy Craig here from The Grave Matters, and this is my quick take of the week. How many of you are familiar with the term, the glass cliff? Now you might be thinking, why would I be bringing up a term like the glass cliff? Most of you probably are not even aware of what that means. I'm sure there's some women out there that are familiar with though. Now, I'm bringing this up because there's been a lot of talk about Deion Sanders this week and the fact that the Colorado Buffaloes are opening up with all of this attention that he has brought there, how he's expected to turn the Colorado Buffaloes football program around. There's even a lot of people who are still a little bit miffed at the idea that he left Jackson State. I know as somebody who I am HBCU through and through. Go Big Blue. I love my Tigers. I love Tennessee State. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of different feelings and emotions about Deion Sanders. But what's important, I think, that isn't getting enough attention is what makes what Deion Sanders did by going to Colorado different than a lot of other people who have taken positions of leadership, taken head coaching jobs at other places. And so I kind of want to highlight that and give a different perspective. I brought up this idea of the glass cliff. What are glass cliff leadership roles and opportunities? So the idea of the glass cliff is simply this. Typically, it's something that you find with like black men, other minorities, especially with women. Everybody knows what the glass ceiling is, which is this idea that as a woman in leadership, you can see the opportunity, but there is a glass ceiling, meaning you don't realize until you get to the top that there's no way for you to actually break through and actually get over the edge. The same thing is true with the glass cliff, except it's a little bit different. Glass cliff positions are described as leadership roles and opportunities where you're given the opportunity, but it's only given to you in what appears to be a seemingly like impossible situation. Something where there is either and these are the kind of conditions that have to exist. There's no funding, so economically and financially it's strapped, it's challenged. There's no resources to be able to give to the opportunity, even though you have the title and the expectation to do all of what is required of the job. Another one is if there's a crisis, meaning it's an emergency, there's some type of shift, there's something that goes on, like maybe there's a fire, there's some type of turmoil, there's the building collapse, there's all these types of things where it's a crisis, and so we don't have the opportunity to put a person in place who we think is capable. Or you have something where it might be otherwise negative, public relations wise, a scandal breaks out. They find out the previous person who was in charge was embezzling or some sex scandal. And so nobody wants to go there because it's considered radioactive, it's considered toxic. And so a lot of times these are the positions that they give the opportunity to blacks and other minorities when they can't find anybody else who's qualified. And now, while Colorado was just god awful last year, they only won one game, and they haven't been a relevant program, even though they're a Power 5 team, even though they're Division 1, they have not been considered relevant in decades. They have not been considered a good job, even though it's Division 1. And so most people look at that and think, well, why is this no different? Well, isn't this exactly the same thing that you just described? And what I contend is no, for a couple of reasons. And this is part of the reason why I root for Deion so hard to be successful here. He's not only probably one of my top 2 or 3 favorite athletes of all time. And I follow his career, and he was amazing at everything he ever did as an athlete. But more so than that, I root for him as a coach in this situation, because what Colorado did that was so different is, even though they're Division 1 and even though they're in a Power 5 conference, they're considered the bottom. And yes, all the other conditions as far as them being strapped and struggling would appear to be the same, but Deion had expectations and there were conditions and things that he wanted in a head coaching position, and Colorado actually did what so few black people in leadership find, which is they actually invested. They actually invested in him. They didn't just say, we're going to give you the job, or yeah, we're going to make some improvements, and they splash a little paint on the walls and, you know, put fresh towels in the locker room. No, they actually invested in their program, and they actually gave him a level of control that you only generally see reserved for white men who hold his resume. White men who have actually come from places where they actually took a program and they won and they were extremely successful. They may not, you know, everybody's starting out, the resume is kind of thin, but they actually put the money behind it. They actually put the power behind what he's doing. And so Colorado is always going to be disadvantaged, like many of your schools in the Midwest or up north where it's colder. You don't have a state in Colorado that just naturally is a hotbed for talent, say like a place like Florida or Georgia or Texas, and places where it's warmer and you have a lot more 4 and 5 star recruits to pick from locally. But the fact is, Colorado, understanding those things, they still put tens of millions of dollars behind what it was that Deion Sanders was offering and bringing to the table, and they actually showed up. And for that, I root for both Deion and for Colorado, because they were frankly willing to do what so many people are not willing to do for black men. I know, obviously not on that level, but I know in different places and different stops along the way in my career and what I've done, there are very few opportunities for black men to come along and get a plum job, get a plum position, be able to be put in leadership and actually invested in with the expectation to succeed. It's usually one of those things where it's desperate, or there was a scandal, or there was something like that. And part of what you find also with the glass cliff phenomenon is that when the person does come in, let's say you do hire a black man or you do hire some woman who's going to lead, what happens is after they've turned the ship around, they either let that person go, push them aside, and bring somebody else in to do the job, somebody who they felt like they wanted to be there, or they figured, well, you've done so well with so little, just keep doing what you're doing. And they never return the investment later on by saying, we didn't expect this to succeed, but now that it is succeeding, we're going to continue to invest in you in that way. What Colorado did was they didn't just wait for Deion to come in and give the investment, but they actually showed the confidence in the investment up front. They're obviously not going to be able to compete because of boosters and money behind the program. They're not going to be able to compete with the big schools, the gigantic ones like Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and Florida and places like that. But the fact is, even if, let's say 5 years from now, because this is the speculation, 5 years from now, Deion Sanders is going to go and find him another position at a bigger school. Let's say Florida State calls him. That's been the big, suspicion out there. Or even the NFL. Maybe a team that is desperate comes along and he may want to go back and really prove it at the top level. And to that I say, hey, Godspeed. Good for you, Deion Sanders, if that's what you want to do. We don't begrudge anybody who gets an opportunity or say that they're disloyal or that they're not being prudent or they don't have any integrity because they decided to go up. Everybody takes positions and they work their way up. I don't hear anybody looking at Nick Saban, for example, and thinking, well, you left Michigan State and decided to go to the NFL and somehow he was disloyal. We don't talk about that for Urban Meyer. We don't talk about that for practically anybody, but yet some of that was the criticism behind Deion Sanders. And so I just wanted to give a different perspective on what it is that not only Deion Sanders did, but why the opportunity at Colorado was so much different. Like it was not the same as what we've often found for our black head coaches and leaders in these positions. And so I wanted to offer that up and hopefully give us a different perspective, and hopefully we can actually root for Deion on his road to success this year in college football. that's it. That's my hot take for the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave comments. Feel free to offer questions or suggestions or anything that you would like to hear us talk about here at The Gray Matters. As always, be safe out there, be kind, and be blessed.